Maya had always been the supportive wife standing in the background, while Ethan climbed the corporate ladder at our anniversary party. She finally showed her true feelings by kissing my colleague right in front of everyone. I stood there frozen. As glasses clinked and whispers spread through the room, perhaps they thought I would break down or cause a scene, but instead, I calmly walked to the microphone and announced my promotion and immediate transfer to Tokyo headquarters, a decision I had been contemplating for weeks, but hadn't shared with anyone, especially not my husband of 5 years, whose face drained of color as applause filled the room that evening, was meant to celebrate our 5th anniversary, a milestone in our marriage that I had meticulously planned for weeks. Ethan had insisted on hosting it at the Riverside Hotel, where we first met, claiming it would be romantic to revisit the beginning of our story. I spent days coordinating with caterers, selecting the perfect decorations, personally writing invitations to our closest friends, family, and select colleagues. Ethan had been distant during the planning process, often working late or traveling for business, but I dismissed my concerns as paranoia. After all, his career at Horizon Investments had always demanded his time and attention. The party was in full swing when I noticed Ethan's frequent glances toward Maya, his executive assistant. They had always maintained a professional relationship, or so I believed. Maya had been hired shortly after our wedding, and I had welcomed her into our social circle, even inviting her to our home for dinners. She was beautiful in an understated way, with her chestnut hair and delicate features, but I never felt threatened by her presence in Ethan's life. Looking back, I should have noticed the lingering gazes, the inside jokes, and the way they gravitated toward each other at company events. I was across the room chatting with Ethan's boss, Mr. Henderson, who had just finished telling me about the Tokyo expansion project. "Olivia, with your experience in international markets, you'd be perfect to lead the team in Tokyo. The position is yours if you want it," he said, swirling his champagne. I smiled politely, explaining that such a move would be complicated given Ethan's position at the company. "Think about it," Mr. Henderson insisted. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The offer stands for the next month." As I contemplated his words, I caught a glimpse of Ethan leading Maya onto the balcony. Something in their body language made my stomach tighten. I excused myself from Mr. Henderson and made my way through the crowd, stopping to thank guests for coming and accepting congratulations on our anniversary. By the time I reached the French doors leading to the balcony, the sight before me shattered every illusion I had maintained about my marriage. Ethan had Maya pressed against the stone railing, his hands cupping her face as they kissed passionately. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice me or the handful of guests who had also wandered toward the balcony doors. I heard a glass shatter. Mrs. Peterson, Ethan's aunt, had dropped her champagne in shock. The sound alerted the couple, and they sprang apart, their expressions changing from passion to horror as they registered my presence. "Olivia," Ethan stammered, his face flushing. "This isn't I can explain." Maya at least had the decency to look ashamed, her eyes downcast as she straightened her dress, but the damage was done. In that moment, fragments of memories clicked into place: the late nights at the office, the mysterious text messages, the sudden business trips that couldn't be rescheduled. It had been happening right under my nose, and I had been too trusting, too dedicated to our marriage to see the truth. The room had fallen silent, everyone's eyes darting between us, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. I could feel tears threatening to spill, but something inside me hardened. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Instead, I took a deep breath and made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I walked to the center of the room where a microphone had been set up for toasts. The sound system crackled as I tapped it gently. "If I could have everyone's attention, please," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate this special evening with us." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Ethan pushed through, his face a mask of panic. "I have an announcement to make," I continued, locking eyes with Mr. Henderson, who nodded encouragingly. "I've been offered the position of International Operations Director for Horizon's new Tokyo headquarters." The room erupted in surprised gasps and scattered applause. "I've decided to accept the position," Effective immediately. I'll be relocating to Tokyo next week. Ethan stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. He clearly hadn't expected this turn of events. Maya hovered behind him, her expression unreadable. I handed the microphone to Mr. Henderson, who enthusiastically elaborated on the Tokyo project while I made my way through the stunned crowd toward the exit. Several hands reached out to congratulate me, while others patted my shoulder in silent support. Everyone had witnessed Ethan's betrayal, and my dignified response had earned their respect. Outside, the cool evening air washed over me as reality set in. I had just publicly announced a life-changing decision fueled by shock and pride. But underneath the impulsiveness of the moment, I recognized that this opportunity represented freedom. Chance to rebuild my life away from the humiliation and betrayal. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Henderson. Contract will be ready tomorrow. Proud of you, Olivia. The drive home was a blur. I packed an overnight bag and booked a hotel room, unable to face the prospect of confronting Ethan in our home that night. As I settled into the sterile hotel room, the gravity of what had transpired washed over me. For 5 years I had centered my world around Ethan, supporting his career while putting my own ambitions on hold. I had believed in our partnership, our shared dreams, our future together. Now it felt like those years had been built on quicksand, slowly sinking beneath my feet while I remained oblivious. My phone lit up with notifications. Concerned messages from friends and family who had witnessed the evening's events. I silenced it, unable to relive the humiliation through explanations and sympathetic words. Instead, I opened my laptop and began researching Tokyo, neighborhoods, language courses, cultural norms. If I was going to start fresh, I would embrace it. Fully morning arrived with harsh clarity. I returned home when I knew Ethan would be at work, intending to collect more of my belongings. To my surprise, he was sitting in our living room, still wearing his rumpled suit from the night before. His eyes were bloodshot, evidence of a sleepless night. Olivia, he started, rising from the couch. Please, let me explain. What you saw with Maya, save it, I interrupted, moving past him toward our bedroom. I don't need the details. Can't seriously be moving to Tokyo. He followed me, his voice rising in disbelief. What about us? What about our marriage? Turned to face him, a cold laugh escaping my lips.
Our marriage.
The one where you kiss your assistant at our anniversary party? That marriage, it was a mistake, he pleaded. One terrible lapse in judgment. Maya means nothing to me. Funny, it didn't look like nothing, I replied, pulling a suitcase from our closet and beginning to fill it with clothes. And based on the guilt written all over both your faces, I'm guessing last night wasn't the first mistake. Ethan's silence confirmed my suspicions. Continued packing, a strange calm settling over me. How long? I finally asked, not looking at him. 6 months, he admitted quietly. But Olivia, I was going to end it. I realized what I was risking, what I could lose. Apparently not soon enough. I cut him off. The Tokyo position is a 2-year contract. I've already accepted it. 2 years? Ethan's voice cracked. You can't do this. We need to work through this together. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I finally stopped packing and looked at him. The man I had loved, trusted, built a life with, now a stranger who had betrayed me in the most public, humiliating way possible. Why her? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since I saw them together. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I had once found endearing. I don't know, he confessed. It just happened. We were working late, traveling together for business. She was there, attentive, admiring. It was flattering, and I wasn't. I challenged. I've supported every career move, attended every company, function, been the perfect corporate wife while building my own career. Was that not enough? It's not about you, he insisted. You've been perfect, too perfect, sometimes. Maya she's uncomplicated. His words stung more than he could know. I had devoted myself to our partnership, believing we were building something meaningful. Together, all while he sought uncomplicated affection elsewhere. In that moment, I realized Tokyo wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a necessary one. I need space, I said firmly. 2 years in Tokyo will give us both what we need. You can figure out what you want, and I can remember who I am outside of this marriage. And if I want to fight for us, Ethan asked, his voice small. I zipped. My suitcase closed. Then you have 2 years to prove it's worth fighting for. The week that followed was a whirlwind of preparations. I signed the contract with Horizon, secured an apartment in Tokyo's Minato district, and began intensive Japanese language lessons. Ethan alternated between desperate attempts to change my mind and cold acceptance of my decision. He moved out, temporarily, giving me space to pack up our home and decide what to keep, store, or sell. Friends and family rallied around me, though their support was often tinged with concern about my drastic decision. Aren't you being hasty? My mother asked during one of her visits to help me pack. People make mistakes, Olivia. Marriages survive affairs all the time. This isn't about punishing Ethan, I explained, carefully wrapping framed photos once. Without him to take with me, it's about choosing myself for once. This position in Tokyo is what I've worked toward my entire career. I've just been too focused on supporting Ethan's ambitions to pursue it. My mother nodded slowly, understanding. Dawning in her eyes, when your father had his indiscretion. With his secretary, everyone told me to forgive him, that men stray but always come home. She folded a sweater with meticulous precision. I listened, and we stayed together. But something changed. I diminished myself to preserve our family. Don't make my mistake. Ert stayed with me as I continued preparations for my departure. I was not diminishing myself, I was expanding, growing, reclaiming parts of me that had been overshadowed by my role as Ethan's wife. Tokyo represented not just physical distance from betrayal, but a chance to discover who Olivia Bennett could be when she prioritized her own dreams. 3 days before my flight, Maya appeared at my door. Her presence was unexpected, and my first instinct was to slam the door in her face. But curiosity won out, and I let her in, watching as she nervously perched on the edge of my couch. I know you must hate me, she began, her voice trembling slightly. You have every right to. I don't hate you, I replied honestly. I don't know you well enough to hate you. What I hate is the betrayal, the lies, the humiliation. Maya nodded, wringing her hands. I came to tell you that I've requested a transfer. To another department, Ethan and I. Whatever was between us is over. That's between you and Ethan, I said coldly. It doesn't change my plans. I understand, she said quickly. But there's something else you should know. She hesitated, clearly struggling with what she was about to say. Ethan, ... He's been blocking your career advancement for years. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? There were other international positions that came up. Berlin 2 years ago, Singapore last year. Your name was at the top of the list both times, but Ethan intervened. He told senior management that you weren't interested in relocating, that you preferred to stay near family. Maya couldn't meet my eyes. He was afraid your career would overshadow his if you took those positions. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those years I thought I was making sacrifices for our partnership. Ethan had been actively sabotaging my career to protect his ego. The Tokyo offer had only come through because Mr. Henderson had approached me directly, bypassing the usual channels. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, struggling to process this new betrayal. Because you deserve to know the truth before you go, Maya replied, and because... She paused. I've realized what kind of man Ethan really is. The same way he betrayed you, he'll eventually betray me or anyone else. That's who he is.
Actor.
Maya left. I sat alone in our half-packed living room, surrounded by the remnants of a life built on deception. The Tokyo transfer wasn't just an escape from a failed marriage. It was my liberation from years of invisible chains. With renewed determination, I finished my preparations, my resolve stronger than ever to embrace this new chapter. The day of my departure arrived with unexpected clarity. The heavy rain washed over the city, turning the morning gray and somber, fitting weather for endings and beginnings. I stood in our bedroom one last time, taking in the space that had witnessed both love and betrayal. The king-size bed where we had shared dreams and made plans for a future that would never materialize. The walk-in closet now half empty, Ethan's suits hanging like ghosts of our former life together. I had spent the last week methodically dismantling our shared existence, putting our home on the market and dividing our possessions, some things I shipped to Tokyo, others I stored at my parents' house, and the rest I simply left behind, physical reminders of memories I couldn't bring myself to keep, but wasn't ready to discard completely. Ethan had texted last night asking to drive me to the airport. I declined, preferring the professional distance of a hired car service. Some endings were better faced alone. As I wheeled my luggage toward the front door, the doorbell rang. My heart stuttered, fearing Ethan had ignored my wishes and come anyway for one last dramatic appeal. Instead, I found Mr. Henderson standing on my porch, his silver hair damp from the rain. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," he said, removing his wet coat. "I wanted to see you off personally and give you this." He handed me a small package wrapped in elegant blue paper. "Consider it a going-away present. Don't open it until you're on the plane." The gesture touched me. "Thank you for everything," I said, meaning it. "For the opportunity, and for approaching me directly about it." Mr. Henderson's expression turned serious. "Olivia, I've been in this business for 40 years. I know talent when I see it, and I know when someone's light is being dimmed. You should have been offered international positions years ago." Maya told me, I admitted. "About Ethan's interference." Mr. Henderson nodded grimly. "Suspected as much, but couldn't prove it until recently. That's why I made sure to speak with you directly at your anniversary party." He hesitated before adding, "For what it's worth, Ethan has requested a transfer to Tokyo as well." My blood ran cold. "What? He came to me yesterday, insisted he couldn't let you go alone?" Mr. Henderson held up a reassuring hand. "I denied the request, of course. Told him the Tokyo office needed a fresh start without personal complications. He didn't take it well. Relief washed over me. The thought of Ethan following me to Tokyo, turning my fresh start into another chapter of our damaged relationship, was unbearable. "Thank you," I said again, with deeper feeling. "You've earned this chance, Olivia. Just don't let anyone, not even yourself, convince you otherwise." He checked his watch. "Your car should be here any minute. I won't keep you." As he turned to leave, he paused. "Tokyo will change you. Let it." The ride to the airport passed in contemplative silence. Rain streaked across the windows, blurring the familiar cityscape into watercolor smudges. I had lived here my entire life, first as a bright-eyed college student, then as a newly married professional, and now as a woman on the verge of reinvention. Would I recognize the city when I returned? Would the city recognize me? The airport hummed with activity, a hive of comings and goings, tearful goodbyes and joyful reunions. I moved through security and toward my gate with mechanical efficiency, my mind already halfway across the Pacific. As I settled into the first-class seat, another perk of my new position, I remembered Mr. Henderson's gift. I carefully unwrapped the small package to find a sleek leather journal with my initials embossed in gold and a note tucked inside. "Olivia, in my experience, the most significant journeys happen within us, not just across oceans. Document this transformation. You'll want to remember who you were and who you become. Tokyo has a way of revealing what's essential. Trust the process." Charles Henderson, as the plane taxied down the runway. I looked out the window at the city shrinking beneath me. Somewhere down there, Ethan was continuing his life, perhaps already regretting his choices, perhaps already moving on with Maya or someone new. For the first time since the anniversary party, I realized it no longer mattered. My future lay elsewhere. The 13-hour flight gave me ample time for reflection. I opened the journal Mr. Henderson had given me and began to write, not about Ethan or the betrayal, but about my hopes for Tokyo. The career advancements I sought, the experiences I craved, the person I wanted to become. By the time the captain announced our descent into Haneda Airport, I had filled 10 pages with dreams that had nothing to do with the life I was leaving behind. Tokyo greeted me with a symphony of lights, piercing the evening sky. The company had arranged for a driver to meet me, a soft-spoken Japanese man who introduced himself as Tanaka-san. "Welcome to Tokyo, Bennett-san," he said with a deep bow. "Horizon Investments is honored by your presence. The drive from the airport to my new inn." Apartment in Minato took us through the heart of the city. Neon signs illuminated crowds of fashionable pedestrians. Massive video screens advertised products I couldn't read, and skyscrapers stretched toward the heavens like modern temples. The energy was palpable even from inside the car, a buzzing, electric vitality so different from the familiar rhythm of home. My company apartment exceeded expectations. A sleek, minimalist space on the 20th floor of a luxury building with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the glittering cityscape. The kitchen was stocked with essentials. The closets contained plush robes and slippers, and on the dining table sat a welcome basket filled with local delicacies and a note from the Tokyo office staff. "We look forward to working with you, Benetson. Please rest well and join us tomorrow at 10 o'clock for your orientation." Exhaustion suddenly hit me like a physical weight. Jet lag, emotional fatigue, and the enormity of what I had done all converged at once. I managed to unpack only my toiletries and night clothes before collapsing onto the bed, falling into a deep, dreamless sleep beneath the glow of Tokyo's never-ending light show. Morning arrived with disorienting brightness. For a moment, I didn't know where I was reaching instinctively for Ethan before reality rushed back. Tokyo. Alone. By choice. I prepared for my first day with meticulous care, selecting a charcoal gray suit that projected both confidence and respect for Japanese business culture. The mirror reflected someone I barely recognized, a woman standing straighter, eyes clearer, jaw set with determination. Horizon's Tokyo headquarters occupied 10 floors of a gleaming tower in the financial district. The elevator whisked me to the executive floor where I was greeted by Yumiko Takahashi, the human resources director who would be facilitating my integration. "Benetson, welcome," she said, bowing slightly. Her English was impeccable, with just a hint of British inflection. "We are very excited to have you leading our international operations. Your reputation precedes you." "My reputation?" I asked, surprised. Yumiko smiled knowingly. "Your work on the Asian market's expansion strategy was quite impressive. Us wondered why you weren't offered an international position sooner." I swallowed the bitter response that threatened to escape. How could I explain that my own husband had sabotaged my career advancement without seeming unprofessional? Instead, I simply said, "I'm here now, and eager to contribute." The day unfolded in a blur of introductions, presentations, and orientation sessions. The Tokyo team was smaller than our headquarters, but impressively efficient. By lunchtime, I had met all the department heads and been briefed on ongoing projects. Yumiko insisted on taking me to lunch at a traditional restaurant nearby. "It is important to understand Japanese business culture from the beginning," she explained as we removed our shoes and settled at a low table. "Relationships matter more than contracts here. Trust must be established before business can truly begin." Over an elaborate meal of sashimi, miso soup, and dishes I couldn't name, Yumiko gently probed my personal situation. "The Tokyo assignment is typically for families. Your husband did not accompany you?" The question was innocent, but pierced like a blade. I considered fabricating a simple excuse, but something in Yumiko's direct gaze encouraged honesty. "My husband and I are ... taking some time apart," I said carefully. This position came at the right moment for me personally as well as professionally. Yumiko nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Tokyo is an excellent place for reinvention, Benetson. The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The breaks become part of the object's history, making it more beautiful than before." She poured more tea into my cup. "Perhaps Tokyo will be your gold." Back at the office, I was shown to my new workspace, a corner office with panoramic views of the city and Mount Fuji in the distance on clear days. As I settled behind the desk, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Landed safely? The house feels empty without you." I stared at the message, feeling nothing but a dull irritation at his intrusion into my new beginning. With deliberate calm, typed a brief response, "Safe in Tokyo. Please direct any further communication through our lawyers." Then I silenced notifications from his number and turned my attention to the stack of reports waiting for my review. That evening, rather than returning directly to my apartment, I decided to explore my new neighborhood. The streets of Minato were alive with after-work energy. businessmen loosening ties in izakaya bars, young professionals shopping in high-end boutiques, tourists snapping photos of every uniquely Japanese scene. I wandered without purpose, letting the city introduce itself to me through smells, sounds, and sights. In a small bookshop tucked between modern buildings, I found an English language section and selected a guidebook and a Japanese phrase book. The elderly shopkeeper smiled warmly at my awkward attempt at arigato and added a small paper crane to my purchase. "For new beginnings," he said in halting English, making a flying motion with his hands. I continued my exploration eventually, finding myself at a tiny restaurant where business people sat at a counter watching the chef prepare their meals. With no English menu available, I pointed to what someone else was eating and was rewarded with a steaming bowl of ramen, more delicious than any I had tasted before. The simple pleasure of this meal, eaten alone in a foreign country where no one knew my name or my story, felt like freedom. Back in my apartment, I opened Mr. Henderson's journal again and wrote about my first day, the kindness of Yumiko, the energy of the city, the taste of authentic ramen, the sensation of being unknown and therefore unlimited. As I wrote, I realized I hadn't thought about Ethan or the betrayal for hours. Tokyo was already working its magic, filling my mind with new experiences that left little room for old wounds. My phone buzzed again. An email from the company's relocation specialist with information about language classes, cultural orientation sessions, and expat social groups. The final paragraph caught my attention. "We've enrolled you in a weekend photography workshop as requested by Mr. Henderson. He mentioned you used to enjoy photography before your career took precedence." Tears pricked my eyes unexpectedly. I had indeed loved photography in college, spending weekends capturing urban landscapes and candid moments. Somewhere along the way, somewhere in the process of becoming Ethan's wife and a corporate professional, I had set the camera down and never picked it up again. How had Mr. Henderson known about this long-abandoned passion? And why did the thought of reclaiming it make my throat tight with emotion? The photography workshop was scheduled for Saturday morning at a cultural center in Shinjuku. I arrived early, clutching a cappuccino from a nearby cafe and feeling strangely nervous. The sleek digital camera I had purchased the day before felt foreign in my hands, an expensive impulse buy that represented both my newfound financial independence and my attempt to reconnect with a forgotten part of myself. Around me, Japanese photographers of various ages chatted animatedly. Their equipment far more professional than mine. I felt like an imposter until a tall Western man approached with a warm smile. "First-timer?" he asked, nodding at my camera, still half in its packaging. "I'm Daniel Cooper, one of the workshop instructors." "Is it that obvious?" I replied, embarrassed. "Olivia Bennett. I used to photograph years ago, but I'm basically starting from scratch." Daniel had an easy presence about him, with sun-weathered skin and laugh lines around his eyes that suggested a life lived mostly outdoors. "The best photographers are beginners at heart," he said, helping me remove the protective film from my camera's display screen. "They see everything fresh. Once you think you know what you're doing, your work loses its wonder." The workshop began with technical instruction, then moved to the streets of Shinjuku for practical application. Daniel assigned each participant a different emotion to capture through urban photography. Mine was transformation. "You've got the hardest one," he admitted, as we walked through a busy market street. "Transformation isn't a moment, it's a process." I spent the morning contemplating his question, observing the city through my viewfinder. I photographed an elderly woman teaching her granddaughter to fold origami, her hands forming identical motions across generations. I captured construction workers dismantling an old building while new glass towers reflected in its remaining windows. I focused on a butterfly resting on a businessman's shoulder as he waited at a crosswalk, unaware of his delicate passenger. When we reconvened to review our work, Daniel paused longest at my images. "You have a natural eye for juxtaposition," he commented. "Especially this one." He pointed to my favorite photo, a young woman removing her business blazer after work. The setting sun, illuminating half her face while leaving the other in shadow. You've captured someone between identities. It's professional and personal, duty and freedom, past and future. Isn't that all of us, all the time? I asked, surprising myself with the philosophy. Always becoming something new. Daniel studied me with interest. Most people resist transformation. They cling to who they've been, even when it no longer serves them. He handed me a business card. We're doing a night photography session on Wednesday. The way Tokyo transforms after dark is magical.
You should.
Join us. I accepted the invitation without hesitation. The workshop had awakened something dormant in me, not just the joy of photography, but the pleasure of seeing the world on my own terms, filtering experiences through my own perspective rather than wondering how Ethan would perceive them. The following week established my new rhythm in Tokyo. Days were filled with intensive work at Horizon, where I was already implementing changes to streamline international operations. Evenings and weekends became adventures of self-discovery, photography excursions with Daniel's group, language classes where I fumbled through basic Japanese phrases, explorations of hidden neighborhoods where tourists rarely ventured. Yumiko proved an invaluable guide to both Japanese business culture and Tokyo itself. You seem different than when you arrived, she observed one evening as we shared sake at a tiny bar near the office. More ... present, I admitted. For years I was half of something, Ethan's wife, one part of a couple. Here I'm just me. It's terrifying and exhilarating. And your husband? He contacts you still? I sighed, swirling the clear liquid in my small ceramic cup. Every day at first, maybe once a week. It's always about practical matters, the house. Sale, financial arrangements, but with emotional undertones, I choose to ignore. Yumiko nodded thoughtfully. In Japan, we have a saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Many women here understand what it means to make yourself smaller for a husband's comfort. But we also have bamboo. It bends in the storm, but never breaks, and when the pressure releases, it stands taller than before. Her words resonated deeply. How much of myself had I compressed to fit within the boundaries of my marriage? How many dreams had I deferred? Opinions softened, desires muted. Tokyo was allowing me to expand into spaces I had forgotten existed. Within me, my photographs began documenting this internal expansion. Daniel praised my developing style, noting how I captured moments of liberation. A businessman feeding pigeons with childlike delight. Office workers removing ties and laughing as they entered an izakaya. A young couple dancing impromptu amid cherry blossoms. Your eye is drawn to freedom, he observed during a critique session. Particularly people escaping convention. Projection, probably, admitted with a self-conscious laugh. 2 months into my Tokyo adventure, the inevitable occurred. My phone lit up with a message from the last person I expected, Maya. Ethan is coming to Tokyo for the International Finance Summit next week. He asked me to warn you. I thought you deserved to know. My stomach dropped. The Finance Summit was a major industry event hosted at various Horizon offices around the world. Of course, Ethan would attend. He was still a senior executive, regardless of our personal situation. Still, the thought of him invading the new life I had carefully constructed felt like a violation. I immediately called Mr. Henderson back in the States. Despite the time difference, is there any way to prevent this? I asked after explaining the situation. I'm afraid not, he replied, sympathy evident in his voice. The summit involves all major departments, but I can ensure your paths cross minimally. We'll stay at a different hotel, attend separate breakout sessions. Thank you, I said, fighting disappointment. I just need more time before facing him again. Olivia. Mr. Henderson's voice turned serious. You've been doing exceptional work in Tokyo. The board is impressed with your restructuring of international operations. Don't let Ethan's presence undermine your confidence or achievements. After hanging up, I opened my journal and wrote frantically, pouring out my anxieties. The thought of seeing Ethan again stirred complicated emotions. Would he try to win me back? Would seeing him reawaken feelings I thought I'd put to rest? Would he bring Maya? The questions swirled until I closed the journal and picked up my camera instead. Photography had become my therapy, my meditation, my way of processing emotions. too complex for words. That evening, I joined Daniel's photography group for a session capturing the famous Shibuya crossing. As thousands of pedestrians surged across the intersection from all directions, I focused my lens on a single businesswoman confidently striding through the chaos, her red umbrella a beacon in the sea of humanity. "That's your best shot yet," Daniel commented, reviewing my display screen. Over the weeks, we had developed an easy friendship. He was an American expatriate who had made Tokyo his home for a decade, working as a photojournalist for international publications. His knowledge of the city's hidden corners had enhanced my explorations, and his gentle critiques had improved my photography exponentially. "Can I ask you something personal?" I ventured as we packed up our equipment. When he nodded, I continued. "Have you ever had to face someone who hurt you deeply after you'd started rebuilding?" Daniel's expression grew thoughtful. "My ex-wife came to Tokyo 3 years after our divorce. She had remarried and was honeymooning here of all places." He zipped his camera bag deliberately. "I thought seeing her would destroy me. Instead, it showed me how far I'd come. The man who loved her desperately no longer existed, not because she broke his heart, but because he had grown into someone new." His perspective stayed with me as I prepared for the summit. Rather than dreading Ethan's arrival, I chose to see it as an opportunity to measure my transformation. The woman he had betrayed, the supportive wife who diminished herself to enhance his light, was disappearing day by day. Would he even recognize who I was becoming? The summit began on a Monday with an opening reception at Horizon's Tokyo headquarters, addressed with deliberate care, selecting a crimson dress that I would never have worn during my marriage. Too bold, too attention-grabbing, too confident. My Japanese language tutor had helped me style my hair in a modern interpretation of a traditional style, and the effect was striking. The woman in the mirror looked powerful, assured, and distinctly unfamiliar. I arrived fashionably late, making an entrance that turned heads. Colleagues from Tokyo greeted me warmly, introducing me to international counterparts with evident pride. "Benetson has revolutionized our operations," Yumiko told a group from the European offices. "Her integration of Eastern and Western business practices has increased efficiency by 22%. I was deep in conversation with the Singapore team when I felt that distinctive awareness of being watched. Turning slightly, I caught Ethan's gaze from across the room. He stood frozen, champagne flute halfway to his lips, staring at me with undisguised shock. The man who had shared my bed for 5 years looked like a stranger. Familiar features arranged in an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Was it regret, desire, calculation? Whatever it was, I was surprised to find it didn't touch me the way I had feared. I nodded politely in acknowledgement and returned to my conversation without missing a beat. Let him come to me if he wanted to talk. I would not disrupt my evening or abandon my colleagues to accommodate his presence. An hour passed before he approached, waiting until I was momentarily alone at the sushi station. "Olivia," he said, his voice carrying that intimate tone he reserved for emotional manipulation. "You look incredible."
Thank you.
I replied evenly. "How was your flight?" He seemed thrown by my casual response. "Long, lonely?" He stepped closer. "The house sold last week. I've been staying in a corporate apartment." "I received the paperwork," I said, selecting a piece of sashimi with deliberate calm. "My lawyer will transfer your portion of the proceeds. Is that all you have to say to me after 3 months?" Frustration edged his voice. "Financial arrangements." I met his gaze directly. "What would you prefer, Ethan? Should we discuss how you sabotaged my career opportunities? Or perhaps your relationship with Maya? Is that still ongoing, by the way?" He flinched visibly. "Maya and I. That ended the night of our anniversary party. It was a mistake, Olivia. The biggest mistake of my life. 6-month mistake," I corrected gently. "And not your biggest one. Your biggest mistake was underestimating me, thinking I would tolerate betrayal, or that I needed you more than you needed me." Ethan's expression hardened. "You've changed." "Yes," I agreed, feeling the truth of it resonate through me. That was rather the point of coming to Tokyo. Before he could respond, Yumiko appeared at my side. Benetson, the CEO, is requesting your presence for the toast. She glanced at Ethan with polite disinterest. You must be the former husband. Excuse us, please. As she led me away, I felt Ethan's eyes burning into my back. The confrontation I had dreaded for months had lasted barely 2 minutes and left me feeling stronger rather than diminished. Daniel had been right. The woman Ethan had hurt no longer existed, replaced by someone he had no power to wound. The remainder of the summit passed with minimal interaction between us. We attended different sessions, sat at different tables. During meals, moved in different circles during networking events. Occasionally, I would glimpse him watching me, his expression growing increasingly frustrated as he realized I was not only surviving but thriving without him. On the final evening, the closing gala, he made one last attempt, finding me alone. On a balcony overlooking Tokyo Tower, he approached with 2 champagne glasses. A peace offering, he said, extending one toward me. I accepted the glass, but maintained my distance. Tokyo sparkled below us, a constellation of human ambition and dreams spread across the darkness. My city now, not his. I've accepted a position in Singapore, he announced. It's what I should have done years ago, supported your international aspirations instead of holding you back. Is that an apology or a strategic career move? I asked, genuinely curious. Both, he admitted with surprising honesty. I lost you, Olivia. Nothing has felt right since. If distance is what you need, I'll give you that. But I'll also be close enough to remind you of what we had, what we could have again. I studied him in the moonlight, this man I had once believed was my entire world. Handsome still, certainly charming when he wanted to be, but I could now see the calculation behind his warmth, the self-interest masked as concern. What we had wasn't real, Ethan, I said gently. It was a relationship built on my compromise and your convenience. I don't want that anymore. What do you want? He pressed, stepping closer. I gazed out at Tokyo, the city that had become my sanctuary, my canvas, my teacher. I continue becoming someone I'm proud to be, I answered truthfully. And to never, again, make myself smaller to make someone else feel bigger. After the summit concluded, Ethan departed for Singapore, leaving behind a business card with his new contact information and a handwritten note. When you're ready to reconsider, I'll be waiting. I placed both in a drawer and promptly forgot about them, immersing myself fully in Tokyo's embrace. The city continued to transform me as summer faded into autumn, bringing with it new colors, scents, and revelations. My work at Horizon flourished beyond expectations. The integration methods I developed for the Tokyo office became a model for other international branches, earning me recognition from the global executive team. Mr. Henderson called monthly, each conversation revealing his growing confidence in my leadership. The board is impressed, he mentioned during our latest call. There's talk of extending your contract beyond the initial 2 years. The prospect of staying in Tokyo longer filled me with unexpected joy. What had begun as an escape had evolved into a genuine home. My apartment no longer felt temporary, but had acquired personal touches reflecting my evolving identity, framed photographs I had taken of the city, Japanese pottery collected from weekend explorations, books in both English and my increasingly competent Japanese. My friendship with Daniel deepened as autumn painted Tokyo in fiery hues. We spent weekends photographing the changing maple leaves in parks and temple grounds, our artistic collaboration gradually shifting into something more personal. He never pushed or presumed, respecting the invisible boundaries I had established after Ethan's betrayal. Instead, he simply remained present, sharing his Tokyo with me one hidden gem at a time. I'm exhibiting some photographs next month at a gallery in Roppongi, he mentioned casually as we reviewed images from our latest excursion. I'd like to include a few of yours if you're willing. Your perspective on Tokyo as both insider and outsider is compelling. I stared at him in disbelief. My amateur shots next to your professional work? That's generous, but hardly appropriate. Daniel shook his head, scrolling through my camera roll, and stopping on an image I had captured of an elderly couple sharing an umbrella during a sudden rain shower. This isn't amateur work, Olivia. This is someone seeing beauty that others miss. His hand briefly covered mine. You've developed your own voice these past months in photography and beyond. The gallery exhibition opened on a crisp November evening, Seeing my photographs professionally printed, framed, and displayed alongside Daniel's established work was surreal. Each image told a story of my evolving relationship with Tokyo, early shots reflecting curiosity and distance,
Oh.
more recent ones revealing intimacy and belonging. Together, they chronicled not just my exploration of a foreign city, but my rediscovery of myself. What I hadn't expected was the commercial interest. By evening's end, half my photographs had sold to art collectors and corporate clients looking for distinctive images of contemporary Tokyo. The gallery owner approached with an unexpected proposal. "We'd like to feature a solo exhibition of your work in the spring," she said, handing me her card. "Your unique perspective as a gaijin who sees beyond stereotypes has significant appeal." Later that night, as Daniel and I celebrated over sake and sushi, I felt a profound sense of alignment I had never experienced before. 6 months ago, I was defined entirely by my marriage and my corporate role. I reflected, watching city lights shimmer on the Sumida River. Now, I'm being offered a photography exhibition. Life is strange. Not strange, Daniel corrected, just honest. When you remove what's not authentic, you create space for what is. A week later, I received an unexpected email from Maya. "Ethan is engaged to a Singaporean executive he met at the summit.
Out.
You should hear it from someone other than office gossip. Hope you're finding happiness in Tokyo." The news should have affected me somehow. Anger, relief, vindication. But I felt only a distant acknowledgement, as if hearing about a character from a book I had read long ago. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a simple message: "Please finalize all remaining financial arrangements with Ethan. I'm ready for complete closure." Then I opened my journal and made a single entry. "Today I realized I am fully free." Winter transformed Tokyo into a wonderland of illuminations and festive decorations. My first Christmas abroad brought unexpected gifts: a promotion to executive vice president of international operations, an invitation to showcase my photography in a prestigious annual calendar, and most surprisingly, the realization that I had built a genuine community around me. Japanese colleagues invited me to traditional New Year celebrations, expat friends included me in holiday gatherings, and Daniel became a steadfast presence, never demanding, but always available. On New Year's Eve, we stood among thousands in Shibuya, waiting for the countdown. Snow fell gently around us, transforming the urban landscape into something magical and new. "Any resolutions for the coming year?" Daniel asked, his breath visible in the cold air. I considered the question seriously. To stop defining myself by what happened before Tokyo, I decided that chapter is written and closed. I'm ready for the next one. As midnight approached, Daniel turned to face me. "I've been waiting for you to be ready," he said simply. "Not for me necessarily, but for whatever comes next. You arrived in Tokyo looking backward. Now you're looking forward." The crowd began, counting down around us, their voices rising in collective anticipation. In that moment, surrounded by strangers united in hope for the future, I made a choice. When the clock struck midnight, I kissed Daniel, not from loneliness or habit or expectation, but from genuine desire and appreciation for the man who had shown me Tokyo through new eyes. Spring brought cherry blossoms cascading across the city like pink snow, their ephemeral beauty, a reminder of life's impermanence. My solo photography exhibition opened to critical acclaim, with several pieces purchased by the Tokyo Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art for their contemporary collection. The theme I had chosen, Kintsugi, beauty and repair, featured images of Tokyo's constant renewal, where ancient shrines stood alongside futuristic architecture, and traditional practices coexisted with cutting-edge innovation. On the exhibition's closing night, I found myself standing before my favorite photograph, an elderly Japanese craftsman repairing a cracked tea bowl with gold lacquer. His weathered hands transforming damage into art. Daniel joined me, slipping his arm comfortably around my waist. "This is my story," I explained, leaning into his embrace. "I came to Tokyo broken, and this city has filled my cracks with gold." 1 year to the day after my arrival, I received an email from Mr. Henderson containing a formal offer to make my Tokyo position permanent. "The choice is entirely yours," he wrote, "but you've built something remarkable there. It would be a shame to abandon it. That evening, Daniel and I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint Tokyo's skyline in amber. "And Rose, will you stay?" he asked. The question hanging between us with all its implications. I thought about the woman who had fled to Tokyo seeking escape and found purpose instead. The betrayal that had seemed world-ending had ultimately freed me to discover a life more authentic than the one I had desperately tried to preserve. "Yes," I answered, the decision feeling right in every cell of my body. This is where I belong now. My journey from heartbreak to wholeness taught me that sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to the best versions of ourselves. What began as an impulsive announcement at an anniversary party became the doorway to a life I never knew I wanted. Tokyo wasn't just my refuge, it became my renaissance. If you've ever stood at the crossroads of staying in pain or leaping into the unknown, I hope my story gives you courage. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away from what's familiar toward what's possible. The path of transformation isn't easy, but as my photography has taught me, the most beautiful images emerge from embracing both shadow and light. Have you experienced a moment that seemed like an ending, but became a beginning? Share your story in the comments below. If you found inspiration in my journey from betrayal to rebirth, subscribe to this channel for more stories of transformation. Remember, it's never too late to announce your own Tokyo. That brave, the decision that might just change everything. Till next time, find the gold in your broken places.